This is episode 297 of Milwaukee's Tailgate Brewers podcast, part of the MKE Tailgate Network. I'm Steve. I'm sitting in for James this week, but don't worry. We still got Ryan. We still got Paul here. How you guys doing this week?
That would be noted Christian Yelich skeptic Steve Garshinsky, right?
get right to it.
Yeah, let's just go right away. We'll go hard here.
I have no problem with that. Yelich has bounced back. Okay, so here's the one thing that I find interesting is I think as the season started, what was the over-under was on 20 home runs for Yelich, right?
I believe that's correct.
Between you and me, it was, yes.
Oh, I thought that was the real number. That was not the real number? Like the Vegas number?
That could be. I just know Steve and I had a bet kind of about this.
Okay.
I just think it's interesting with the bounce back he's had this season. He's still four? I think he's got 16. He's like 4 home runs away from actually hitting that number. Mm-hmm. Even with how hot he's been. It is not the vintage MVP Yelich.
It's not. It's not. No. It's a different kind of player. That is true.
I'm happy to see him back.
It's Marlins Yelich. Like peak Marlins Yelich is what we're getting right now, which is perfectly fine. You pay that guy $26 million a year, no problem. That's really, really not a big issue.
Yeah, it's all right.
So, yeah. No, I was actually, when I listened to the podcast ahead of time, because you guys recorded on Sunday morning last week, I was sitting there just walking around with my wife, and we were like sitting in a church yard, and all of a sudden I'm yelling out, "It's Steve! It's Steve! It's Steve!" Like, and getting weird looks from people, like, because so immediate was my reaction that that could only be Steve that he was talking about. So yeah, and then
I'll take it.
I told Steve in advance too that like you get called out, but not by name, and they didn't catch who it was who was being called out. So yeah, you got let off the hook.
You know what? I will happily take that if Yelich bounces back, because I'd much rather have a productive Christian Yelich than sit here and complaining about how the guy's never going to act back together for all this. So
100%.
We'll take it. I am happy. I am cheering for the guy. Regardless of how disappointed I've been at times, I'm still cheering for the guy, and I want him to be productive.
Yeah. Anyway, to answer your question, so this weekend I built a cardboard boat. It is the town's cardboard boat regatta that happened this morning, and the Noonans, I will exclude Danny, who is a little bit handy, but we are good at math and we are good at computer stuff. We are not good at engineering. As a rule, like Pinewood Derby, when I was growing up, I got the award for the car where your dad clearly didn't help you at all, even though my dad did help me quite a bit. So like the kids are doing it, they're helping, but it's up to me to make sure the boat gets across the pool, which so we did a lot of duct tape. It made it across the pool, but which is good. Like, it didn't sink. And they didn't win because they were like the smallest kids in it, and the kid who won it was just like this teenager who like was sitting in like a beer crate and just paddled himself as fast as humanly possible. Like, kudos to him for it. But we get done and it made it. I'm very proud that it made it. It's taken on some water though. It's not in great shape. And an announcer comes on and announces, now it's time for the captain's race, the traditional race where the dads race the boats back the other way. And like, it's not like there's like 1 square inch of it being dry, and the back is just taking on a ton of water, and I didn't know this was happening. So all the dads get in, their boats are still working, and I throw mine in like all right, maybe I can like kind of doggy paddle the front half of it back. I get in right to the bottom, like straight to the bottom of the boat. So but that's fine. We get a trophy for what we always get a trophy for.
There's an episode of Bob's Burgers, I think, where he and Tina have to do a boat like that.
So, oh yeah,
yes. You should look that one up.
Yeah. So Steve and I both grew up in the greater Madison area. You attended school there, Paul. Did you guys ever go to the milk carton regatta down in the Winger Lagoon that the engineering department would put on? My dad used to take us down. More than once we went down, for sure.
I think I actually did see it once or twice. Yeah. So.
I was on the working class side of town, so I didn't participate in that.
But it was definitely just an excuse for, Wisconsin college kids to get drunk at like 10 in the morning and go, swim around the lagoon while they're trying to keep their boat afloat. Like, it was exactly what you would expect it to be, but I remember it being a lot of fun. So yeah.
Nice. Well, I'm also glad Paul doesn't have any puking stories this week. So that's good.
Yeah, everybody kept it down.
I was at the Great Taste of the Midwest this week. So.
Oh, nice. So do you have any puking stories?
I didn't. There were people getting dragged out.
Oh, of course there were.
I think it was too busy this year for there to actually be like visible puking. There wasn't enough open space. So I'm sure other people got hit, but we just didn't have to hear about it. But
yeah, I wasn't vomiting this week, which is good because my brother was. He got the Rona, and so did I, but he got it much worse than I did. I just kind of have a little bit of a cold is my only symptoms. So we got the Wook Rona at MSG going to the fish shows. So
there you go.
Yeah. So that was definitely a thing that happened. But yeah, he had it bad. Like he was running like a fever up above 102. And right. I didn't have a fever, didn't have chills. Like literally cold symptoms was as bad as it got. I thought I'd actually avoided it. I thought I just had a cold, and nope. Thursday morning I popped, so I wasn't able to go to the Great Taste, which was terrible. It was
a big event this year. So, but anyways, for more discussion on vomiting, you can become a patron at patreon.com/MKE tailgate for more of the scintillating discussion. $2 a month guarantees you your questions answered on both this podcast and reporting is eligible, which is about the Green Bay Packers. If you didn't know about that, I think there's some Packer fans. So we'll just make sure they're informed. Yeah. That might fly under the radar. So I just want to point that out because I know a lot of people aren't paying attention yet. While $5 gets you that question priority plus additional exclusive content, including the minor league extra with Ryan and James Anderson of RotoWire. And then you get Paul's mini pods, which he actually wears the old Johnny Carson turban and has the cards that
predict Karnak?
The future. Mm-hmm. Yes, Karnak. There we go. It is your Karnak impression when you do the mini pods.
Oh, because of my forecasting ability.
Yes.
Got it. Yeah. All right.
It is very accurate.
It is very accurate most of the time. The numbers, they don't lie. In preseason, sometimes they do, but usually not.
So if you draft all Packers on your fantasy team, you'll know whether to start or sit them. You're just going to be screwed with everybody else.
We do not really do fantasy advice. We concentrate on real life and whether they'll win or be good or stuff. So
it is. So is Jordan Love ever going to be able to hit a deep ball?
That was one of the problems of the game, to be sure. I think so. He first of all, deep ball is only like half quarterback skill anyway. Like you wing it out there to Watson enough, he'll catch a few of them no matter what. And it was a strength of his in college. Like that's one of the things he was actually good at. He had trouble with the other ones, so it's good to see improvement there. So I think he'll be okay there. And also, he had one, if not for Dax Hill, the outstanding Cincinnati safety that we probably should have drafted a couple of years ago.
Okay. Well, it seems like all they need to do is find like open space and then tell Christian Watson to go run there.
That's a good way to do it.
I mean, I'm not a football genius by any means, but I think that would be my plan if I.
Yep. I mean, that plan actually worked pretty well. So, like when Sean Clifford played, by the way, Sean Clifford is bad. Everybody should understand that. He put up nice numbers, but he threw 2 interceptions, which is a very Sean Clifford thing to do. But like that's kind of the offense. Like you get guys in space, and then Samori Toure runs an extra 20 yards, and like that's good. That works well with Jordan Love too. So should be all right.
There you go. So subscribe, make sure you get access to that, and you will be a better fan going into each Packer weekend. But on to the Brewers. After going 3-4 through the first half of this extended run against non-contenders last week, the Brewers righted the ship, going 5-1 against the Rockies and the White Sox to get back out in front in the NL Central, leading both the Reds and the Cubs by 3.5 games. On most nights, the games have been close, often comeback wins where the offense does just enough to sneak by, and that's being generous to say they even did just enough. Because, man.
Sometimes the other teams do just enough.
Yeah, exactly. But let's get into questions here. We got our first question from Price Trozen. Our bullpen has been pretty great, but I don't think it's sustainable for 43 more games at this rate of close games. Do you have confidence in either A, the bats waking up, or the second tier of 7, 8, 9 pen pitchers carrying the Brewers through? Paul, what do you think?
Go. So you're right that they can't. So the problem that they're likely to run into I don't think it is really one of regression on outcome so much as just like the top end relievers just getting tired. Like you can't play this many one run games constantly and just drag out Devin Williams over and over and over. You need your blowouts every once in a while to rest. They got one today, fortunately, barely.
Yeah, barely.
They were pushing it.
They almost made it close, but I think they are actually good enough to keep sustaining essentially this level of success. And it's not like they've been perfect either. Like, they give one away every once in a while. But they just, I think they're 24-10 in one run games. But it's not new for the Brewers under Counsell to be super good in close games. It's pretty much the norm. But they do need to get them rest. And that's where the offense needs to come to play a little bit more frequently. And it's where I think Woodruff's return can probably help a bit too. Not that he's going to be, he'll be on a bit of a pitch count for a while until they're sure he can go. But their starting rotation now offers some relief for the bullpen too, whereas they're not going to have to string together like a crazy bullpen game as often as they used to. That'll help them get some rest too. So I actually think this is kind of sustainable. Like this is how they win, and it's how they've won in the past. And like as long as Williams keeps being like the super unhittable Williams that he is, and his stuff's good enough to do that, I think they'll be okay. Offense being better would be nice. It really, really would. But I don't think they're going to just crash on the bullpen unless they just cannot stop playing one-run games. But that's not how this works. They'll have even a couple lost blowouts that will save them every once in a while too.
So does Chafin stink, and is he our now annual like relief pitcher gas can acquisition at the deadline?
Hasn't he pitched 4 like basically perfect outings and 1 bad outing?
Man, that bad outing.
I mean, it was
It's
bad
in people's minds, but I do think Ryan's right about that.
Yeah,
I don't think he's actually been as bad as is conventionally understood.
Right.
I know. But when you watch a guy like walk away a win, it's like, oh, Jesus Christ.
Yeah, that was brutal. Getting back to the question, first off, Paul, you were 24-10 is exactly right on the one-run thing.
Woo.
And guess what? They would be right now 13-13 in blowouts, except the parameter that they use here on Baseball Reference is 5+ runs, and they fell to 4 runs today instead of 5. So they had it at 7 going into the ninth. So they would be an even 13-13, but instead, because of the way that game played out, they fell back in. So, basically everything you really hit the big point, because I think the thing about the offense has been better. Like the offense was getting better even before the trade deadline, has been better since. It doesn't show up in every game, but you're seeing far more blowouts and big numbers than you were before.
Really quick, one of the reasons that people have the opinion of Chafin that they do is that 2 of his appearances are in, I think, 14 and 12 run games that the Brewers put up, where nobody was paying attention to what he did. He actually pitched well in those. Mm-hmm. But yeah, they've scored some runs against the non-contenders here.
Yeah, they've put up more runs offensively, and I think there also is a depth in the bullpen. I don't know how much I necessarily want Andrew Chafin pitching in the 8th inning of a 1-run game, but in the 8th inning of a 3-run game where he's going to get a couple lefties, I think that's perfectly acceptable. I think that's fine, and you could start doing some more of those things. So it's not just about like getting it to be a bunch of blowouts. It's about getting, instead of winning a 1-run game, winning a 3-run game. Like it's still close. It's still maybe a save situation, but it's not as close and as tight as what they've gotten. So they have that, and the emergence of Abner Uribe is giving them a legitimate extra option here that they have. Yes. I mean, he is really, really good. God, did you see that 101-mile-an-hour turbo sinker? Like,
so good.
It's unhittable, and the only hope a guy has is just to not swing, and he throws enough strikes that guys can't really just be like, okay, I'm just not going to swing at this guy. People have to swing, and so you could tell he's such an uncomfortable at bat for so many people at this point that guys do not want to stand in there against him, because even if you do make contact, it's kind of like who's the closer in Baltimore throwing 100-mile-an-hour bowling balls up there. Like, it's going to hurt when you make contact with the baseball. Like, it's going to sting your hand, because those balls are just moving at such a high velocity and with such spin that it's guys just do not want to face that. It's pretty clear that that he's just really uncomfortable, or he makes guys really uncomfortable that way. So yeah, and the thing I was also going to mention was the thing about the starters being a little bit better when you've got Woodruff and Miley back, because Miley came back too. Yeah. When you've got those two guys in there also, that helps as well. So I think all of those factors make this more sustainable than I normally would think it was. I don't know if it's 100% sustainable. I think they're going to need to win more games via blowout, but I also think that that's something they're now capable of doing, at least more so than they were before.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, our next question from Made Wiley. Excellent starting pitching, great defenses, very good bullpen with the premier closer, an offense that has been bad but has 2 stars, and an improving supporting cast. Take away past battle scars, and should we not be feeling pretty good right now about the playoffs?
I mean, making them? Yeah, I think so. I feel pretty good about that. And even though the offense, I'm still skeptical of. Like, I like the additions they made to upgrade from awful to average in Santana and Kana, but I still think there'll be a problem facing elite pitching in the playoffs. But all that said, like, with Woodruff back looking good, if you can get Burns looking more like his old self, which he's kind of been in fits and starts, and if you can just kind of get Freddie to keep doing this, which, I mean, knock on wood, it's Freddie, he doesn't keep doing this, but, you know, you get lucky, he goes on a nice run, plus the bullpen, you can, I think, mow down some elite offenses and stay in any game with anybody they face. So, yeah, I do think there's reason to be excited. Wish their offense was a little bit better, especially the way Yelich has been trending the last week. But, you know, they're well set up in terms of run prevention to be able to hang in any game. And that's kind of all you can ask from this Brewers team.
Yep, I think that's the big thing, is that there's just a lot of different ways, sort of deceptively, that this team is now capable of winning. And some of them actually do kind of involve the offense now. They can get on base better than they were before. I think that's been the biggest addition that Santana and Canna have brought, is they've brought the ability to get on base in a way that they can now lengthen the lineup. And so they're better from that perspective. And that does give you some chances at big innings, even if you aren't necessarily like hitting home runs the way they have in the past. And this team is not the power hitting team that we've seen in the past. So it gives them more ways to do that. But yeah, I feel pretty decent about the playoffs. I was just looking coming into the day. Pacoda had them at 75% to make the playoffs and 50% to win the division. So they're really giving the Cubs credit for the move that they've made, though the Cubs did fall back. So those numbers will go down some going into tomorrow. But over at Fangraphs, it's 67% to win the division and 83% to make the playoffs. This is like the first time I can remember where Fangraphs was more optimistic about the Brewers' chances than Pacoda was. So this is a little bit strange. Dan Saborski's system usually is a little more skeptical of the Brewers, and especially they've been more believing of the Cardinals than Pacoda ever is. But with the Cardinals falling out of this equation for once, it sort of doesn't matter. But yeah, I feel pretty decent about them making the playoffs. It's far from a sure thing, but I feel pretty good that they're going to do that. And then it really just is a matter of like the matchups, and if you have some guys that can get hot. And they clearly have guys who are capable of getting hot. It's just sort of a question of whether or not they will. So you have to wait and see on that, but that's the way the baseball playoffs are no matter what.
Yeah, it's hard to feel like really good about it when you do have a hot Cubs team that doesn't seem to go away. The Reds are still there. So you really have a 3-team race in the division. You know, it would be nice if they were putting a little bit more distance at this point in the season between them and the next couple of teams. So I think that's the only thing right now that has everybody nervous, because we've also seen some late season meltdowns too. So hopefully the Woodruff, we'll call it a reacquisition. Hopefully that's what they needed.
God, yep. That makes people so mad. People get so mad when people talk about getting a guy back from injury as an acquisition. It sets certain people afire.
I mean, you know, when you get to the trade deadline, it's like we could trade for somebody or just let this guy come back.
Yeah,
whatever.
Yeah.
I mean,
like without giving up assets, because I mean, you do have to give something up in a trade.
You do, and you didn't have this player before, and now you do.
So, anyways, we have Patreon questions. We'll start with Elvis Piguero Enthusiast. Willy Adames seems to be the key piece into solidifying the lineup, but it is noticeable the lack of plate discipline he has in comparison to everyone else. Is he choosing to ignore the approach strategy of the hitting coaches? Could he benefit from a visit to the Monasterio optometrist? Ryan, did you want to take that one first?
Well, no, not particularly, but I will. It's fine.
Okay. Well, Paul's gone first on the last couple, so.
Oh, okay. So, yeah, I really don't know. I think that this is kind of a lost season for Willie, and it's hard not to sort of put the shot that he took to the head at the center of it, even if that has nothing to do with any of this. It's weird, though, the way that Rizzo thing, like, delayed. There was this delayed reaction where Rizzo had a concussion. He came back and played for a couple months, and then everybody said, something is still wrong with him here. And, like, the team didn't catch it. He didn't notice it or whatever. And so you have to kind of wonder if that's playing a role here. But then again, him having, some offensive struggles is not like news. He's gone through ups and downs, even in his time with the Brewers. We've just never seen it be sort of extended like this for as long as it's been this year. But the other thing is, like, so say what you want. Last year, Willy Adames' walk rate was 7.9%. This year, it's 10.1. So he's still taking like a good number of walks. It's not quite as good as his walk rate was in 2021, 10.3, but he's still walking a pretty decent amount this season. And he actually took another walk today, so it's even better than that. But I don't know if it's like a swing decision thing here with him, or I have a really hard time putting my finger on exactly what is going on here. I know that the quality of the contact, Paul, hasn't been as good as it was in the past.
His problem, I think, fundamentally is that he actually can't hit anything. And so it makes it hard for him to realize that he's not making good contact. He needs to lay off. He pulls everything. Like, Willie's spray chart is pretty much dead pull. He'll hit a mistake home run the opposite way every once in a while. But he is easy to get out just by pounding the outside of the zone, because he will swing at those balls, he will try to pull them, and he will make contact that has him with an average exit velocity of 9% in the league, which is, you're threatening Owen Miller, who is not on the team anymore, at that. So he is just a weak contact machine. People know how to get him to generate weak contact, and until he adjusts by either going the other way, and I think he has to do that, because I think he is taking. That's why he's walking more. Is he's not swinging at those pitches because he doesn't. He makes weak contact, but he's got to he's got to do something with it to get the inside pitches back, and he's not doing it. So I don't know if he just can't do it, or his swing doesn't work for it, or what. But that is the fundamental Willie problem. Trying to hit outside pitches is the problem of a lot of people.
Yeah, I mean, this is like the classic issue that so many, especially right-handed hitters, have, is this thing. We saw this at various times with Corey Hart, with Ricky Weeks, with J.J. Hardy. All those guys had issues like this at times where it was, getting overly pull-happy and being unable to adjust to pitches on the outside and do something with them as far as taking them the other way. This is not a new problem. It's just something he has to try to work through. I will say we were all pretty gung-ho in the offseason about the idea of extending him. I think now that looks like kind of a bullet dodged, doesn't it? That if they had extended him, that could be kind of problematic right now.
Well, okay. So you're kind of jumping ahead because Jay Google
sorry,
asked,
you're right.
He did ask if we think the Brewers will try to extend Adames to like a 4-year deal, or do they move on from him after this year? And I think you're kind of answering that already, that you think, no, that ship has sailed.
Well, first off, it's not after this year. They have one more year. He is tied into them for another year, and I would assume they would tender him a contract and bring him back unless they decide to go a different direction. But I think that's pretty unlikely as well. I think you bring Willy Adames back and you hope to get a bounce-back season from him where he has a wonderful platform into free agency, and you make him the qualifying offer, you get the extra draft pick. Everything is wonderful for everybody. on that. But yeah, I think 4 years would be a weird one too, because I'm not sure either party would necessarily want to do it's sort of a middle length, right? Like Willie would want more than that and the Brewers would want less than that. So it's hard that they'd end up settling for that. That just seems like a weird length, doesn't it?
I guess, but at this point, I think you're going to get a weird. So first of all, I actually kind of like extending guys when they're not doing as well. Like buy low, buy when other people are selling is a good rule of thumb. My hesitation there is the Brewers are not good at fixing hitters, and if I had more confidence that they could kind of get him back to normal, then I would definitely advocate for doing it. But I think a contract with him would look weird because you are buying low, and he might want a shorter contract because he might want to hit free agency again after he fixes himself. I mean, he's not going to make huge bank right now with a long deal. He's not going to get top end shortstop money. Not that he was going to get it anyway, but he's going to get way less. And sometimes when you see guys like this, they do take shorter deals to get themselves figured out, to get one more shot at true free agency when they catch fire. So 4 years actually seems like maybe, although I was going to say 3 would be just kind of my go-to number there. But I don't think they'll do it. And I don't know if it's a bullet dodged or not. Well, it is absolutely a bullet dodged for the timing. If you did it now, you would get him at a discount. But yeah, had they did it before, that would have been bad.
Yeah, before we were saying it would have been like a minimum of probably $150 million contract.
Yeah, more like in the 120 to 150 range, but yeah, in that.
But with all the deals that were being handed out this past winter, I mean,
it was a spending spree with the TV stuff. So yes,
yeah, absolutely.
So that would have been
the new CBA as well.
Yeah.
This winter was not a good time to do extensions or to sign free agents. It turns out, so that happens when you have a cash bonanza in the game, which basically happens every time there's a new CBA. So should sort of plan on that, but. Yeah, this was not a good winter to spend anyway. So, and that's really been borne out by a lot of the teams that did spend are falling flat on their face. So you can kind of see that as a cause and effect there.
Yep. Before we move on from Willie real quick, hard hit percentage, 2021, 44.7, 43.6 last year, only 35.2 this year. The hard hits just aren't where they used to be.
Yeah, the question is what's causing that, and that's really kind of hard to say. What exactly have pitchers gotten smarter about what he is trying to do, and they're just better at avoiding those sweet spots, or is something actually wrong with him that's causing that? It's kind of hard to say. If you had to guess, don't you think that's probably going to bounce back the other direction next year?
I actually think he has to make an adjustment. I think he's more or less figured out, and I think. When that situation arises, it's kind of a crapshoot as to whether they can. I don't think it's a regression to the mean thing. I think it is actually he needs to get a better opposite field approach to scare guys a little bit more, or actually just lay off those pitches entirely and start forcing walks out there at the expense of his K rate also going up, which is always a mixed bag and kind of leads to your eventual downfall as a hitter entirely.
Okay.
Lucroy Suitcase asks, what would be your ideal batting order of players on the team? I get that Adames has been good in the past, but it seems he should be batting 8 or 9. Ryan, you like batting order questions.
So we always talk about this, and we always say that, it really doesn't matter much. I think that the most important thing...
hold on.
It doesn't matter.
You could say it doesn't matter, but you still don't want to put a bunch of garbage up top if they're not performing.
No,
well.
You don't. But nobody does that. Nobody actually puts garbage up top.
Well, I don't know. Willie Adames is still batting in the heart of the order, and he's been garbage for a while now.
Yeah, but he's not garbage in terms of when he was still doing that. Compared to what else they were running out there, he wasn't that much worse than that, and he had more of a track record than a lot of those guys anyway.
Usually bats third, does he not?
He's now been batting more fifth than he has been third.
Okay.
I think the main thing is there are 3 guys I want in the top 4-ish spots of this lineup, and they're all batting there on basically a daily basis at this point, and that's Christian Yelich, William Contreras, and Sal Frelick. I don't care how you line them up. I don't care what whatever. Those guys need to be towards the top of the lineup. In fact, Frelick maybe needs to go higher than he even is because he's batting fourth. But whatever, those things, the distinction between hitting third or fourth, or those are fundamentally meaningless. So just don't care about that. But like, those are the three guys I want towards the top of the order. They're towards the top of the order. I'm happy. That's all.
Yeah, I guess. Give me Yelly first. Give me Frelick second. Third is the loser spot. That's always the hardest one. Because Contreras should hit fourth. So I guess first baseman I would maybe put third. Monasterio when he's playing, probably, honestly.
That is a bad call. That's fine. We've got Monasterio questions coming though. So
yeah, I still don't. We'll get to the trusting Monasterio or not, but hard to go against him right now, you know. And then the back end, it just doesn't matter. Like I probably have like Weimer hit last just to get wheels out there for your top three on the turnaround. I like speed at the bottom. Bad speed at the bottom is kind of good, I think. Willie eighth for second cleanup man, I think is fine. And then just fill in whoever's left. Who cares? Terang's been red hot. Put him fifth, whatever. That's good too. But most of it doesn't matter as long as you put the bad players not leading off, which we don't. So that's okay.
Batting order, it doesn't matter, but we can talk about it for 5 minutes.
Yeah, that's right.
Mark Pod Scarby asks, why do you think the Brewers chose to start guys like Colin Ray and Julio Teheran over Robert? Is it Gasser or Gosser?
Gosser.
It is Gosser. Okay. He had he had a pretty decent season in AAA. I would think would certainly provide more upside. It just seems odd to me he never got a shot despite several injuries occurring in the rotation.
So I have a very definite answer for this. The timing of his play has been poor. He got off to a poor start, especially his big weakness is walking batters. He had double-digit walks in both April and May. Unfortunately, I had this up. I have his page up. Those of you who are frequently on MILB will know that sometimes, weirdly, the player pages wonk out on you and you can't get to like splits and game logs. But I was looking at this yesterday when I saw the questions. So, yeah, Gosser was walking a lot of batters early on. And by the time they had the need for bringing in, like, Julio Teheran came in late May. You had Colin Ray sort of establishing himself in the course of May. In the time period when they needed somebody, Robert Gosser was not ready yet. He was not controlling the strike zone well enough. He's gotten better. June, July, August, he has been much, much better at controlling the strike zone. But he wasn't that guy early on. And basically sort of the moment passed where they didn't have a need. And you have to remember, Julio Teheran and Colin Ray, those guys, the Brewers in games they've started were 14-16. And that's pretty remarkable considering how, far down the pitcher depth chart those guys were. It's kind of a miracle that the Brewers got as much as they did out of them. But they were really just good enough during the time period when they were needed that there was no like pressing need to push Gosser in ahead of them. Those guys were doing well enough until the very end, especially with Teheran. Obviously, it didn't end well for him, but that was just his last few starts. And by that point, basically, Woodruff and Miley were ready to come back. So this was all mostly a timing thing. And I still think Gosser does have a pretty bright future with the club. It's just not really going to happen this year for him, which, kind of sucks for him, but it's also, he's only 24. It's not like he's super old at this point.
Okay, question from Jack Bushman. Sal Frelick seems quite good. The league often makes adjustments to young players by finding the hole in their swing, see Keston, and the high fastball. How do you think pitchers will adjust their approach to Frelick, and how should Sal counter it? So, Paul, if you want to take this is really gaming out a ways.
I wish Ryan was going first because he's looked into it more than me. But I'll just start with Frelick's tricky in terms of just his like spray charts and scatter plots and things like that. The fact of the matter is he makes good contact kind of across the zone. And, well, it makes contact across the zone. He doesn't have obvious weaknesses. He has an interesting spray chart. The one thing he's struggled with quite a bit is sliders so far. Does not have good expected numbers against them, has his highest whiff rate against them. The only thing he whiffs more on so far is changeups, but hasn't faced as many. And he is killing fastballs, generally speaking, four seamers and sinkers. So I'm guessing people will start to throw him more off speed stuff and see if he can still continue to make decent contact on that. Four seamers and sinkers make up the vast majority of the pitches he's faced, and he's just murdering the ever-loving crap out of them. But sliders and curveballs have bewitched him a little bit. So I think you'll just start to see more off-speed stuff and see if he can handle it or lay off of it.
Yep. I really didn't find much in the way of anything here. I did see up and in seems to be a bit of a weak spot for him, but it is for a lot of hitters.
I agree with that, but he also lays off of it a lot.
I was going to say that. Yeah. Guys don't pitch to him that much there either, but he's also laying off of it a lot. It's just that any swings he has had have not been successful. That upper sort of part of the zone right on the inside there is sort of a no man's land. Like, you can throw it there. He's not going to swing at it. So if it's a strike, okay, you've got him, but he's also not going to like get himself out up there. So it's just barely in that area. And his hot zone is if you go a little bit below that or a little bit out from that towards the center of the zone, that's his hottest zone. So when a guy's cold zone is very near their hot zone, that tends to be a good state of affairs for a batter. That it's a very fine line a pitcher has to walk to be able to try to exploit them in that cold zone, because if they just barely miss, the batter's probably going to, do something unpleasant with it. So yeah, this is really, like Steve said, this is gaming it out quite a bit in advance. And
yes,
he seems like he's probably a guy who is going to be fairly immune to this sort of thing. I think that the bigger problem, if there does prove to be a big problem with Sal Frelick, is just overall impact in terms of being able to consistently hit the ball hard enough to be like a dangerous hitter. But as far as finding weak spots where pitchers can exploit him, that's going to be a little bit more difficult, I think, for pitchers.
It's always interesting when you hear like, oh, this rookie is hammering fastballs but struggles with off-speed pitches. Why don't they start off more rookies with off-speed pitches to begin with? Like, hey, it's a rookie. Yeah, we're just going to throw him off speed.
It does sound easy just to say that. The big problem with relying too much on off-speed pitches is that they're harder to locate. And Frelick has good plate discipline as well. If you go to that well too much, you will walk him a fair amount, a lot of the time. And, sliders are the thing that really has troubled him the most. And yes, starters do throw sliders, but sliders aren't good for you. They tend to live in relief pitchers more for that reason. They accentuate hard fastballs quite well. They tunnel with them quite well, but they are murder on your elbow. So, a starter's not going to go out there and just fire 10 straight sliders at Sal Frelick. That's not good for anybody. So that I think it kind of does come down to that, just hard to locate breaking balls. And unless somebody has a huge weakness for them, can't lay off them, can't hit them at all, you kind of have to come with a fastball a certain amount of the time. Although I think pitchers could come with more breaking stuff against him than they currently are and not suffer too much. But it kind of does come down to that.
Yeah. Okay. From My Only Lemonade, Sal Frelick has transitioned pretty smoothly into an everyday spot in the lineup and seems like he could reach the ceiling of his potential. If he does, what do you feel would be a good comp for him? Any former Brewers remind you of his athletic contact first style? Everyone seems to be hinting at Paul Molitor, but that's a little boring and obvious.
It's also never comp guys to Hall of Famers. Like,
yeah, don't do that.
You got to be only do it if the guy is like a legitimate superstar prospect. Like, you could comp Jackson Chourio to Hall of Famers because that's what Hall of Famers look like when they're in the minor leagues very often, but you don't want to do that very often. This is a really tough one. The best name I came up with was Brandon Nimmo. And I think that maybe sells Frelick's ability to get hits and carry a high average, because Nimmo's been more of like a 260 to 290 hitter than he has been a 300 plus hitter. And I think Frelick has that in his locker as an ability. I think he could potentially be a fairly consistent 300 hitter, even though that's almost unheard of in today's day and age. Like, that really doesn't happen. But I think he maybe does that. But the rest of it fits really well. Like, he is fast. He is very plate disciplined. He doesn't strike out a lot. Those sorts of things, I think, kind of fit with like the Nimmo profile. Both left-handed, both more slappy than like power approach, but they can both hit home runs when they're given sort of the chance. Like, they can load up and hit one. So Nimmo was the guy I came up with.
Mine's Nori Aoki. I think he is very, very similar to him in terms of he's a good line drive hitter. He's a good defender, hustle guy, and can square one up, enough to be a dangerous hitter too. So that's the first guy who comes to mind for me when I see him out there.
Yeah, it's too bad on Aoki that we didn't get him a little bit earlier, because by the time he got to the States, I think he was already he was either 30 or close to 30. And if
he was around there.
Yeah, if we'd seen him more as like a 25, 26-year-old and he had had a little bit longer run, I think he would have had a pretty solid career in the U.S., as opposed to we really just got the only good years of Aoki and then shuffled him off to Kansas City for Will Smith, right?
I think so.
I think that was
I don't remember. Deal. We'll just go with yes.
Sure. Sounds good. Bob Peterson asks, what is Monasterio's future with the Brewers?
This one is really, really interesting because I've changed a lot. I think, Paul, we talked about this initially. We were both pretty skeptical when he got called up, and then we started to go, wait, there's actually a little something here. I think, all things considered, I like him as somebody to be their utility infielder for the next few years. I think that makes a lot of sense. A guy that you're not necessarily wanting to have in the everyday lineup, but a guy who can fill in your everyday lineup when you have an injury and it's appropriate for that to happen. I think that he does enough well, he does enough right, that I think that's where I'm at with him at this point.
Yeah, I don't think you want to count on him to be like a long-term starter. I think Ryan's essentially correct. Like, he has nice versatility, he has a nice broad skill set, but there's also enough in the background noise that makes you think he could still kind of fall apart. So he's a good story. He is it's good he's on the team because he's one of their only good offensive players this season. But there's definitely still some smoke and mirrors here too. Like, his average exit velocity is not great. His barrel percentage isn't great. Yeah, he walks okay, but there's reason for some skepticism in Monasterio as well.
Okay, so that's kind of an answer a little bit to this Jason Spitz question, who asks, at what point do we start looking at Andrew Monasterio as an everyday player beyond the season, or are we already there?
I wouldn't do it. I think he is a very valuable utility player because of his versatility, and you get stretches like this once in a while. But so just in his offensive profile, I don't see something that translates to this level of production consistently going forward. I think he would have to improve something to continue to get this. I think it's going to come back to earth a little bit.
Yeah, and Jack Stern pointed this out on Twitter today. He was talking about the fact that, he has a really high batting average on ground balls, and that's very, very suspicious. Like, that should immediately be a red flag. And I'm looking at his hard hit percentage now, and it's like 30.3%.
Yeah, it's kind of meh. Like, you can live with that, but it's not anything you want to build on,
It's not Owen Miller territory, but it's not it's not good. But there are enough other things here. He has a good idea of the strike zone.
Yep.
And he has the defensive versatility to play a bunch of different positions. I know there's been some weirdness with the throws home, and that's been frustrating. I get that. Like, it really has been weird and has sucked, but I don't think that's really like a huge issue here. I think that's more of the exception than anything. It doesn't look like he has a huge arm. That is a little problematic for him filling in at shortstop and third base. Yeah, his arm strength, StatCast has the 25th percentile. That is probably more concerning to me than anything else, because it suggests that like his defensive utility isn't as good as I thought it was. But I still think this is a guy you're happy to have around as a utility player on your bench. You just don't want to overexpose a guy like this.
Somebody will. I've been yelled at this before on Twitter when we've made this comment. Second base arm strength readings on Savant can be deceiving because second basemen don't always throw the ball that hard. So there's also that intentionally. Yeah.
Steve DeRozier asked, do you think the Brewers will work with Weimer this offseason to try and fix his approach at the plate? The wonky bat chop he takes when pitcher starts his motion can't be an efficient timing mechanism. Also, he has more body and bat movement in a non-swing than some batters do while taking an actual swing. I just can't see him being a league average batter long-term with those mechanics. Paul, did you want to talk mechanics?
No, Ryan, talk mechanics.
Ryan wants mechanics.
Well, I was going to bring up that this was the reason that James Anderson has been skeptical about Weimer long-term was just, and this is scouts everywhere, look at his swing and go, that doesn't look like a swing that can really like generate consistent good contact in the big leagues. So this is not something that hasn't been seen before. Like this has been spotted by scouts and is a legitimate concern. I would assume that they're always working with guys to try to clean stuff up, but there's also has to be, the player has to sort of decide, okay, I want to make some changes for the changes to really be effective. If a player isn't receptive to making changes, and I don't mean this in necessarily even a bad way, like players have to be receptive to making adjustments, and some guys over tinker and are making adjustments all the time in times when maybe they shouldn't. That doesn't seem to be Weimer's problem, but they're going to have to do something here like this. What he's doing, I don't think does play long term, but I also think that we're so far in the early going at this point with Weimer that we don't know yet how willing he is going to be to make changes like this. So we'll see. I think that this year, with it being his first real taste of failure as a professional ball player, probably as a ball player really ever, where he's seeing extended bouts of failure where he's not hitting the way he sort of would expect to, that can often be an impetus for change for a player to say, okay, that isn't working. I need to do something a little bit different here and try to find ways to be better. So hopefully that is what happens, but I do think something is going to need to happen, or he's not going to be able to actualize those incredibly good tools into the prototypical right fielder that it feels like he could be.
Yeah, to get back to Steve's question a little bit too, I think there's definitely still hope for him, like platoon split wise. When he has that extra split second against opposite-handed pitching, he does make good contact. He sees well, he hits well. But you're right, there's a lot of wasted movement in there, and it definitely is costing him on the short platoon side. Like he is always late, he is not judging the ball correctly, and that is something that it's not easy to fix exactly, but you can get quite a bit better at it by taking out some of the obvious inefficiencies in his motion. So hopefully so, but some time in the cage in the minors might not be the worst thing for him. If they run into an outfielder glut problem, I think it would actually be pretty beneficial for him. He needs work. They should do work.
Yeah, or it could be in fall ball or in spring training. Like there's lots of off season for stuff like this. He could go to a swing coach. He could work with somebody from the Brewers minor league system. There's lots of different ways he could do this.
Yeah, I mean, I also see that movement in violence, and I just think that's not a recipe for a long career, anyways.
Yeah, there is
that's the kind of guy where I'm like, yeah, something like that's going to wear a guy down by the time he's 30. So, also for his career, it would probably just be good to rein that in a little bit.
Yeah.
Cyber Cleric asks, so with the rumors of Musk and Zuckerberg fighting, who would you like to see throw down in a cage? Manfred and Goodell, Battle of the Marks, Murphy and Atanasio?
Well, it is always fun to watch rich people fight. The first thing that popped into my mind, I'd like to see Kurt Schilling and Aubrey Huff in a cage match and just wail on each other for a while because I hate those guys and their baseball. So that would be good. I would enjoy that.
I'm not a fan of combat sports generally. I wouldn't like that one because those two would enjoy that too much. That is their wheelhouse. I want to see Tony La Russa fight Angel Hernandez. I think that would just be good for society. So
I think we should do it where billionaires every year have to fight each other in a cage match to the death. So you can remain a billionaire if you win, otherwise you die. And then that way we can redistribute that obscene wealth that they have. So I think that would be a good way. Like they could be their alphaness until, their luck runs out. So
yeah. So
I think
this fight ever actually going to happen, or is
no,
it Musk already backing out?
It's not going to happen.
Okay. That's what I thought. Musk already has discovered like 6 or 7 different ailments, right? Is what I've been hearing that like he has that are going to keep him from doing this forever.
He's just trying to skeet through it.
It's always been ridiculous. Nobody has anything to gain from that at all.
No.
So it won't happen because of that.
But it gets them attention, and that's the important thing.
Which is what they like, yes.
I think everybody's tired of it as well. For the attention it could get, like everybody's like, no, this is stupid at this point. So Jay Google, he asks, how badly did you guys miss the Great Taste? You guys missed it. How badly did you miss it?
I'll go. Ryan has a better story, I'm sure. So I have never been to the Great Taste because I have never managed to get tickets when it was hard to get tickets. I don't know how it is anymore. And now I don't live by there, so I don't anymore. But beer fests hurt me hard now, so I don't go to them as much. So I'm okay. It'd be nice to go there and have all kinds of fun stuff. But I'm also happy that I am in good health and not hurting horribly. So I'm all right. I've come to terms with this. I'm good.
Yeah. How sore and just generally groggy are you today, Steve?
No, I was good. I've been to beer fests. I know what to expect. I appropriately timed things out. I had water. I had Gatorade. I ate food. So yeah, for the most part, I was fine. I did not suffer the next day.
Yeah, Paul, I'll have to show you the picture that Steve and Jay sent me yesterday on their bus ride home because it's pretty shitty. It's a pretty funny picture. So actually, I think Jay sent me that. Did you even see that?
Jay sent that. Yeah.
Okay. So
there you go. You could post that with the episode.
I'll have to. Yeah. I will post that with the episode because it's pretty great. So, yeah, I was really sad. I was disappointed because the last time we went to this was pre-COVID. And so I was excited to finally get to do it again. And then I got COVID and just had to bail. It was really, you were probably sitting there thinking I was being an idiot, thinking that I was going to escape the COVID and be able to come. And then when I actually said on Thursday morning, oh yeah, I have it, you were not surprised at all in any way, shape, or form. But I had actually managed to convince myself that I was going to get to go and that I had somehow avoided it. So that also sucked.
You were getting pretty close to the point where I'm like, it looks like he's going to skate on this one, but no.
Yeah, I almost did.
Now I will say there were plenty of people with tickets available. If you just showed up and you were waiting outside where everybody was getting their IDs checked, you probably could have found one. I mean, definitely for, just the normal price of the ticket, if not less. People were really trying to unload them, which was wild because it was packed in there.
Yeah. For those that don't know, the Great Taste of the Midwest happens every year, and it's on the east side of Madison at Olin Turville Park. And it is an absolutely gorgeous, perfect setting for the Great Taste, for this sort of thing. There's enough tree cover around there that you can get under some shade and find some trees. You're looking onto Lake Monona. You're looking over at the Monona Terrace, actually. It's kind of off to the left over there. And it's just a legitimately gorgeous place. And yesterday, the weather had to be just about right for it, right? It was
pretty hot. About 2 hours in, we finally got some cloud cover, which helped. It was pretty hot to start off because it was mid 80s plus with direct sun for a while.
Yeah, I mean, and in the middle of August, that's sort of what you expect. But it is really, really good. And they bring in over 300 breweries this year, right? Like 300 to 400.
It was insane. Yeah.
And they bring their best stuff. So it is breweries that are bringing whatever they have that is like sitting in the like in their vault waiting to go for a good event. They pull that good stuff out for this because there are so many journalists that come from all over the world to cover this thing, that you can make a reputation. A brewery can make their reputation as being like an elite brewer of really good beers at this event. So it's a pretty big deal.
Yeah, a number of them, they'll have timed releases because they have such a limited supply. So you can kind of go around and they'll have times posted of when they're releasing stuff. New Glarus had a bunch. They had like 3 timed releases. I'm forgetting what it was. There was like a brewing co-op up in Minnesota that had a bunch. So yeah. And
did you get over to the Toppling Goliath booth at all?
Toppling was right next to this other one from Minnesota, so they had stuff as well. So yeah, all the big ones have that. A lot of sours, a lot of pilsners this year.
Oh, your wheelhouse. You're a big fan.
That's not a wheel. No, here's my thing. I just appreciate times when I can say like, oh, I just want a beer. I don't have to sit there and like sniff it for notes of whatever it was, aged in or brewed with or anything like that. I just want to like drink a beer. And that's generally a pilsner, which a lot of breweries are doing again.
Yep.
I think for that reason, because it had gotten so wild with barrel aged for a lot of your stouts or all of your like hazy and milkshake IPAs and stuff like that, that people just got to the point where it's like, can I just open a beer and drink it?
Yeah, no, that's valid and whatever. I remember the first time I went, I walked around and I told everybody, I'm like, I'm trying to find the hoppiest, the most bitter, like triple, quadruple IPA that I can find. And I finally found it like 5 minutes to close, where I was like, yep, this is it. Which may also have had something to do with the fact that I had a few beers at that point. So I was like, yeah, this is the greatest thing ever. I have no idea what it was. So, but yeah, it is fun. And I am sad that I missed it. It does suck. So, oh well.
So next year you'll have to plan a Patreon get together at the Great Taste of the Midwest. I'll throw out the idea. You guys can figure out how to.
You're very good at coming up with ideas and saying, you go do this.
Yep. That's how we're going to do it. So we do have new patrons this week because football season started and people like Paul's stuff. So who's reading these? Ryan, you doing it?
Yeah, I do that these days, Steve.
Okay.
So welcome back, MC Cham. I know you've been a patron before and you're coming back. Kevin Stern, I think, might also be a returnee. Paul, does that one sound familiar to you?
I'm bad with names. Whether you are or not, welcome back or welcome in the first time.
True Legacy Zero. I don't know what that's about, but yep, welcome to you as well. And Steve and I talked so much about trying to figure out how to pronounce this one before we started. We went back and forth.
It's like a dare.
Pianeski.
Oh, I think you got it.
Yeah. We workshopped this at a time.
Nice work.
So,
I think you actually got it correct.
Pianeski,
yeah.
You should let Josh tell us for sure. If it's anything else, Josh, you should go with that pronunciation.
Which actually, did you guys hear the whole Canna discussion about this? Steve, you will relate to this because you have the same thing. So Mark Canha, that is not the correct pronunciation of his name, but his family, his family going back like 4 generations just went with it. They were like, they got sick of correcting people. It's what he grew up with. It's what whatever. And when he was an adult and met like other relatives or something from elsewhere, found out that they were all saying their own name wrong. But they didn't want to fight it. So they had apparently all just gone with it long enough that became the correct pronunciation of the name.
Where does this pronunciation go back to?
It's Portuguese is what he said.
Oh, Portuguese.
Yeah, it's Portuguese.
Really?
Okay. Yeah. No, what was really funny was Steve and I had known each other for at least half a decade before I finally caught on that it was Garshinsky and not Garzinski. And he'd never corrected me on it, which is kind of hard to believe if you know Steve and I, that Steve would never correct me on something. But no,
that tells you how tired I was of that one.
But yeah, like I think when I heard you pronounce it to somebody else, I was like, wait, It's Garshinsky. It's not Garzinski. So yeah, that made me feel like an asshole, which, you know what? That actually does kind of fit. So you got your wish there anyway.
There you go. Last names. They all suck. So we should just get rid of them. we should all join Elon Musk's Everything app and hand over our names and financial information.
That is, I think, the direction things are headed here as a society.
That's where we're heading, into that hellscape. Sorry, you'll just find me on Blue Sky from this point forward. Anyways, thank you for the questions this week. As a reminder, if you sign up to become a patron at patreon.com/MKE-tailgate, you get question priority every week. And that comes in very useful for the football podcast, where it's basically the only way to get a question on there anymore. Even your brother does it.
Yes, he does.
Mm-hmm.
There you go. And Danny's loud. You can't really miss him. So the fact that Paul
Also
still has to make him pay to get a question on there really tells you what it takes to get on that pod. So remember, you can help support us in another way by going to Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever else you listen, and give us a 5-star review. While you're there, be sure to hit the subscribe or follow button to make sure you never miss an episode. You can also subscribe on YouTube and listen to our episodes and clips there. Just look for our account at MKE Tailgate. That'll do it for this week. Thanks for listening, everyone, and we'll be back next week on Milwaukee's Tailgate.